Blackwater Lake was the pride of our small town, a picturesque, serene body of water surrounded by dense forests that had stood for centuries. During the day, it was a haven for families, with children running along the banks, fishermen casting their lines, and couples strolling along the shores. It was peaceful, almost magical. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the lake seemed to transform. The calm waters grew dark, the trees whispered secrets, and an eerie stillness settled over the area. The older folks in town always spoke about the lake with a certain reverence. They told tales of a phantom, a shadowy figure who had once lived in the small cabin by the shore. The stories varied. Some said it was the restless spirit of a fisherman who had drowned in the lake. Others claimed it was the vengeful ghost of a woman who had been lost to the water under tragic circumstances. Whatever the truth was, no one dared to approach the lake after dark, especially not alone. The town had learned to respect the legends, but to me, they were nothing more than superstitions meant to keep people away from the dark waters. That was until I decided to prove everyone wrong. It was the summer after high school, and my friends and I were eager to experience a night at the lake, to have one last hurrah before we all parted ways for college. We'd heard the stories, but we weren't afraid. We scoffed at the idea that a ghost could haunt such a beautiful, tranquil place. So, we gathered our camping gear, packed some snacks, and headed to Blackwater Lake under the fading light of the late afternoon sun. The night air was warm, and the lake sparkled like 1,000 diamonds as the last rays of sunlight danced on its surface. We set up our tents at the edge of the water, built a campfire, and settled in for a night of laughter, stories, and fun. We joked about the old ghost stories the townspeople told, daring each other to venture further into the forest at night. But as darkness slowly swallowed the sky, the laughter began to fade, replaced by an unsettling silence that seemed to grow deeper with every passing moment. As the fire crackled and the shadows lengthened, the first thing we noticed was the sudden stillness of the air. The crickets stopped chirping, the wind ceased its gentle rustling in the trees, and the lake grew eerily calm. Then, far off in the distance, we heard it, a faint scream. It was distant, but unmistakable. The sound echoed across the water, sending a shiver down my spine. Probably just an animal, Ben, ever the skeptic, said with a forced laugh, but his voice trembled slightly, and I could see the unease in his eyes. We all tried to brush it off, convincing ourselves it was nothing, but deep down we knew something wasn't right. Minutes passed, but the air grew colder, the lake now reflecting the full light of the moon. That's when we saw it. A figure stood across the lake, just beyond the tree line. At first I thought it was one of the other campers, but something about it felt wrong. The figure was tall, draped in a dark cloak, and it stood perfectly still, not moving a muscle. "Who's there?" I called out, but there was no response. The figure didn't flinch, didn't even acknowledge us. It just stood there, silent and unmoving. "Maybe it's someone else camping," Sarah suggested, but her voice faltered. We stared at the figure, and slowly it began to move, but not in the way a person would. It glided across the shore, its feet never seeming to touch the ground. It moved with a grace that was too unnatural, too smooth to be human. "That's not normal," Ben said, his voice now shaking. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure stopped at the edge of the water, facing us. It was too far away to make out any details, but its presence was undeniable. It felt like the air had thickened, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. Then, the figure stepped onto the water. We watched in disbelief as it walked across the surface of the lake, as though the water had solidified beneath its feet. Each step was deliberate, measured, but there was no splash, no ripple. It walked with an eerie calm, its figure growing larger as it moved closer. "Run," Ben whispered. But it was too late. Before any of us could react, the figure stopped, its head slowly turning toward us. Its face was obscured by shadows, but I could feel its gaze, cold and heavy, locking onto mine. My body froze, as though the very presence of that gaze had paralyzed me. "Run!" Ben shouted, breaking the trance. We bolted, not daring to look back. The trees blurred as we ran through the forest, our feet slipping on the uneven ground. I could hear Sarah's breathless gasps behind me, Ben's frantic footsteps, but all I could focus on was the haunting presence of that figure behind us. We didn't stop until we reached the main road, gasping for air, our bodies trembling with fear. When we looked back toward the lake, everything was still. The water was calm, the trees silent, and the figure was gone. We never saw it again that night. We spent the rest of the evening in terrified silence, huddled together, too afraid to sleep. But as dawn approached, and the first rays of sunlight began to creep over the horizon, we thought we were safe. That was, until we realized that Sarah was missing. Her tent was empty, her belongings gone. At first we thought she had left early, but then we found her flashlight near the water's edge, its beam pointing into the dark woods. We searched the area for hours, calling her name, but there was no trace of her, no footprints, no signs of struggle. It was as if she had simply vanished. The police were called, but they found nothing. They searched the woods, the lake, even the surrounding area, but Sarah was never found. The town was shaken, and the old stories of Blackwater Lake took on a new weight. People whispered about the phantom who haunted the shores, how it lured people into the water to claim them as its own. Some believed it was a spirit that never found peace. Others thought it was something much darker, something ancient that had been waiting for someone to come too close. I don't know what happened to Sarah, and I don't know if the figure was really a ghost or if something far worse is lurking in the depths of that lake. All I know is that I will never go near Blackwater Lake again. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying in bed with the window open, I can hear it, the faint sound of footsteps across the water, the haunting echo of a whisper carried on the wind, calling me back.